So, how do you make a marble? Well, first you start with some glass. Next, you will need a marble machine. Then you will need someone to run the marble machine. And last but not least, a group of patrons to pay for the marbles. Let's begin with the glass. Not just any old glass will work. This scrap glass is used to make industrial marbles. For example, the type of marbles used as agitators inside of aerosol paint cans. The glass used to make this run's marbles is first prepared by running it through a glass crusher or a pulverizing machine. The glass goes into the top. A motor spins a breaker bar inside of the machine which breaks the glass into consistently sized pieces. The pulverized glass then comes out the bottom where it falls into a cut-off metal drum. It is then taken to a staging area where it will be until it is ready to be used. The glass used in this run was extremely nice glass. Next is the marble machine. The marble machine really consists of two components: the glass tank that you see here and the actual machine. This is the glass tank where the glass is melted. There is a mixer on top through which gas and air are forced into the tank. The natural gas and air mixture ignite inside of the glass tank. Temperatures will exceed 2000 degrees Fahrenheit inside of the tank. As the glass melts, it comes out of the bottom of the glass tank and streams into the shearing mechanism of the marble machine. A gear spins a cam which moves the shear back and forth. Small chunks of molten glass are cut off and fall into the guiding cups and then drop onto the rollers. A large motor turns the rollers. The glass travels down the rollers where it is rounded into a marble. The marble falls off the rollers and into this trough. It travels down and falls through the channel and goes into one of two buckets that will sit at the end and to the side of the machine. The molten glass comes out of the tank at a smoking 2200 degrees. By the time it drops into the bucket, it will be a solid sphere and be about 1500 degrees. All of this looks a little confusing, but mechanically it is pretty straightforward once you see it in action. Next, you will need an experienced glassman and his crew. In this case, Dave McCullough, Richard McKnight, the gentleman on the left, seen here talking to Steve Sturts, Dale Simmons, the fellow on the right, he's talking to Marlo Peterson, one of the patrons, Russ Moe, and Ronnie Ewers, pictured here with Dave. This gentleman here is Johnny Carr. Johnny worked the night shift and prepped the glass tank for the following day's run. Another key member of the McCullough team, Sammy Hogue. Mr. Hogue wasn't able to attend this run, but his influence is a part of every Jabo marble run. Patrons Steve Sturts and Edna Eaton. Dave McCullough credited Sturts with being the ideal man behind the '08 experimental runs. Sturts has written 3 books on Jabo. Another patron and apprentice marble maker, Dennis Andelin. Dennis chronicled the run with his camera. Another group of patrons, Bill McCaleb's back, Elizabeth Farrar, Ron Shepard, and Lee Lene. There are other patrons, you will see them throughout the film, and there is a complete list of names at the end. What would an event be without spectators? Here you have Boyce Lundstrom seen talking to Lee Lene and Steve Pletcher, also known as Duffy. To get set up for the new run, the machine that makes the 5/8" marbles is moved out. This is the machine that is used to make the industrial marbles. The machine is very heavy and it takes most of the crew to move it. Once it is out of the way, the machine that produces the 3/4 inch marbles is moved into place. This machine will be used throughout the entire marble run. After the machine has been placed under the glass tank, Dave goes out back and checks the glass in the tank to see if it is ready. He removes some of the glass from the tank using a steel rod. After the glass cools, he will be able to tell what color the base glass is going to be. Here, David shows the glass to Weldon Eaton. It looks like the base glass is going to be an orangish yellow color. Eleanor and Steve Pletcher, Bill McCaleb, and Ron Shepard look on. After Dave determines that the glass is ready to go, Richard pulls the plug from the bottom of the tank and starts to clear the hole. He uses pieces of rebar to clean out the hole. This process takes a little bit of time, but pretty soon the molten glass starts to flow from the bottom of the tank. Once the glass is flowing smoothly, the marble machine is moved into position. The glass will flow through the top of the shears. Richard adjusts the flow of glass by tapping on a flat gate that either opens or restricts the flow of glass depending on which way it is moved. This determines the size of the marbles. Dave slightly repositions the machine with a pry bar, and Richard makes a few minor adjustments. The moment finally arrives. The first of the Tribute Marble Run marbles start to plink into the collecting cans. Richard checks the hoses attached to the shearing mechanism. The hoses circulate water through the mechanism to help keep it cool. He pulls each hose off to make sure that water is flowing through it. You can see the water lines and how they move back and forth with the shears. The shearing mechanism cuts off small chunks of glass on the push and on the pull strokes. The glass falls into the guiding cups and then alternate falling onto one set of rollers, then the other. The chunks of melted glass travel down the rollers and are rounded and cooled at the same time. By the time they reach the end, they are solid spheres. Dave mixes different combinations of chemicals and glass, which he adds to the crucibles through the top of the tank. These are the coloring agents used to produce the swirled colors in the marbles. These are the crucibles, where the different colors of glass are added. The glass melts in the crucibles and mixes into the base glass before it flows out of the bottom of the glass tank. Richard keeps a close eye on the machinery and makes adjustments as needed. Dale Simmons is at the end of the machine. He notes changes in the marble families as well as size and conditions of the marbles. He gives feedback to Dave McCullough. Dave responds by mixing up more ingredients and heading back up the platform. There is a huge amount of communication between the men. The budding marble makers have set up around the marble machine to do the various important jobs, such as looking at marbles to see if they are pretty, emptying buckets, adjusting the fireproof batting that prevents the marbles from getting damaged, and the most important job of all, having fun. Okay, enough fun. Now it's time to get back to work. Dave loads his coffee can ladle in preparation for another trip up top. Richard runs his gloved hand down the hot rollers to clean them off. This helps prevent the marbles from sticking to the rollers and thus to each other. When the marbles stick to each other, Richard removes them with his tongs. If he didn't take them off the rollers, they would create what is known as double ingots. Basically, two marbles stuck together and rounded. Here, Russ prepares a new batch of base glass. This glass is plain white glass that he adds coloring agents to. This glass makes up the physical bulk of the marble. After he finishes mixing the glass, he will shovel it into the back of the glass tank. He then adds water to it and uses his shovel to mix it up. Glass goes into the back of the tank. Glass melts in the tank. Glass goes into the top of the tank. Glass comes out of the bottom of the tank. Glass gets formed on the rollers. And marbles plink into the bucket. Seems simple enough, and everything is rolling along fine until the marble machine, which had been running smoothly, starts to make odd noises. The men have pulled the machine away from the tank. Hot glass is streaming onto the floor. Ronnie Ewers rushes and puts a drum under the tank to catch the molten glass. The men quickly pull the gear cover off the machine. They discover the problem. A composite fiber gear has broken. The gear is a sacrificial gear designed to tear up if something happens to the machine, such as a jammed roller. The fiber gear breaks apart, sparing the more expensive steel gears. In this case, the gear is jammed onto the motor shaft and doesn't want to come off. Dave and Ronnie attempt to pry the gear off with pry bars, but they can't get enough leverage on the gear to move it. In the meantime, Richard, who had went to retrieve a new gear, returns, bringing not only the gear, but also that favorite tool of every first-rate mechanic, a hammer. Using a steel rod and pounding it with a hammer, they force the gear off the shaft. Once the gear is off, Dale cleans the motor shaft by sanding it to prep it for the new gear. Dave places the new gear on the shaft, but it won't slide on. They try coaxing it into place. Time is critical. The investor's glass is pouring out into a steel drum. Still, no luck. So, out comes the hammer again, and presto, the gear is back on. The broken gear is laid aside. About 16 minutes had elapsed from the time they pulled the machine until it was producing marbles again. A potential catastrophe diverted by a group of professionals. Once again, the plink, plink, plink of falling marbles is heard. After all the excitement, it's time for a break. Ronnie and Richard keep an eye on the machine. The staff over at Bill McCaleb's kitchen have been hard at work fixing up some food. The neighbor's dog even gets in on the action. Nothing like hard work and good food to make a fellow sleepy. Steve takes a nap while Marlowe works on his Rubik's Cube. Marlowe is a talented fellow whose skills include writing marble books as well as solving Rubik's puzzles. During dinner, Dave's family had arrived for a visit. They are at home in the marble plant. Dave's granddaughter, Mattia, has had a marble run named after her. The banana peel monster has awoke to chase Maddie around. It's getting late. Goodbyes are said as Dave's family prepares to leave. It is getting dark. Dale has set up a light so that the workers can see the marbles. Dave makes another trip up the platform to put glass in the crucibles. This process has been repeated about every 15 minutes throughout the run. This is where the knowledge that comes from years of experience and the making of millions of marbles comes into play. That experience is what makes the difference between producing round glass balls and beautiful, spectacular marbles. After a very long day, the marble run is over. The marbles are moved to a secured building where they will be allowed to cool until morning. Ronnie and Richard have hooked the old marble machine up to a forklift to move it out of the way. Dale Simmons says it all. Richard and Ronnie move the machine that makes the 5/8" industrial marbles back into place in preparation for the next day's work. A long day comes to an end. So, what do you get for all this hard work? Why, beautiful marbles, of course. This marble run was done as a tribute to Dave McCullough, a wonderful man and marble maker. His name will always be associated with the classic experimental runs done at Jabo, Inc. in 2008.
Bleep, 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 bleep. That's all, folks.